It's strange, waking up on your birthday and realizing you don't feel that ache anymore. For years, I used to open my eyes with a tiny hope that maybe this would be the year they'd remember. That there'd be a text, a call, even a happy birthday, kiddo. But silence always answered back. This morning was different. The sunlight spilled across my bedroom like liquid gold, brushing against the silk of my blouse draped over the chair. The city below hummed awake. Horns, coffee carts, a siren somewhere in the distance. I took a slow sip of espresso, watching the foam swirl like small galaxies, and smiled to myself. 9 years. 9 birthdays they forgot. 9 years of pretending it didn't hurt. Then my phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times. I frowned.
Mom.
I hadn't seen that name light up my screen in almost 2 years. Lily, her voice burst through, a little too cheerful, a little too forced. We're throwing you a party. Tonight. Everyone's coming. Your brother's helping organize it. We just wanted to make it up to you, sweetheart. My fingers tightened around the mug. Make it up to me? I stared at my reflection in the window, hair pinned neatly, eyes calm but cold. They'd remembered. After 9 years of nothing, they suddenly cared. Part of me wanted to hang up. The other part, the one that had learned to smile through scars, whispered, go. Let them see what they forgot. I smiled faintly. Sure, Mom, I said softly. I'll be there. I was 15 the first time it really sank in that my birthday didn't matter. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and fresh paint that afternoon. I'd spent hours baking my own cake, lopsided, uneven, but it said Happy Birthday Lily in shaky pink icing. I remember standing there in my favorite yellow dress, holding a knife that felt too big in my hand, waiting for someone to walk in. But the only thing that came through the door was laughter. My brother, Ethan, bursting in with his friends, his arms full of shopping bags and a new watch glittering on his wrist. Mom and Dad followed, carrying takeout trays from some fancy steakhouse, all smiles and noise. I stood there, 15 candles flickering behind me, and they didn't even notice. Ethan's college acceptance dinner was perfect. Mom said, brushing past me, we should have done this years ago. My voice was small. It's my birthday. The silence that followed felt heavier than the cake knife. Dad glanced at his watch. Sweetheart, you know it's been a busy week. We'll celebrate this weekend, okay? That weekend never came. Later that night, I blew out the candles alone. The icing was dry, the frosting too sweet. My chest burned as I whispered the same wish I made every year. Please, just notice me once. The next morning, I found my grandmother sitting on the porch swing. She always seemed to know when something inside me broke. She held out a tiny silver bracelet, thin, delicate, with a small heart charm at the center. Someday, she said, clasping it around my wrist, they'll see who you are. But don't wait for that day to start living, Lily. I looked down at that bracelet. It caught the sunlight, glimmering like a promise. That was the last gift I ever received on my birthday. 3 years later, I packed my things and left home. No goodbyes, no tears, just a folded note on my desk that said, I'll make my own celebration. I still remember the sound of the bus pulling away, the city fading behind me, the bracelet cool against my skin. It was the first time I realized that freedom could hurt and heal at the same time. Starting over at 18 was raw. There's no other word for it. I arrived in Chicago with 2 duffel bags, $200 in cash, and that silver bracelet still on my wrist. I rented a room in a shared apartment above a laundromat, one squeaky fan, one window that wouldn't close all the way, and walls so thin I could hear my neighbors argue about grocery lists. During the day, I went to community college. At night, I waited tables in a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and floor bleach. I learned to live off instant noodles and sheer determination. Some nights I cried quietly into my pillow, whispering, Happy birthday, Lily, to myself just to fill the silence. But that loneliness became my fuel. My turning point came one winter morning when my design professor, Mrs. Whitmore, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, stopped beside my desk. She looked at my sketchbook filled with branding ideas and said, You've got something. Most people try to imitate. You create. Those 5 words lit a spark, I didn't know I still had. With her encouragement, I started freelancing small projects for local cafes and online boutiques. My first paycheck was only $85, but I remember holding it like it was a trophy. I kept building, learning, failing, restarting. Days blurred into nights, and sometimes I'd forget what day it even was, except when that one date in February came around. My non-birthday. By 22, I had a small client list. By 24, I registered my own design agency, LM Studio. Initials vague enough that no one would know it was me. I wanted privacy. I wanted peace. The irony? My family still thought I was barely scraping by. Whenever Mom called, her voice carried that tone, pity disguised as politeness. "How are you managing, honey? Maybe Ethan can help you out with some money." I always smiled through the phone. "I'm fine, Mom." What I didn't tell her was that I just landed a contract with a global cosmetics brand, that the check sitting on my desk had more zeros than my father's annual salary. I built everything quietly. No flashy posts. No humble brag updates. Because deep down, I didn't want to prove them wrong. I wanted to prove me right. Years passed. My team grew, my name whispered through boardrooms and design conferences. But I still kept my social media plain, a few art shots, some coffee photos, nothing personal. Then, on my 27th birthday, I found myself in my downtown office, overlooking the skyline that glittered like a promise fulfilled. I wore the same silver bracelet, and as I traced my thumb over its charm, I whispered, "Someday, they'll remember." But it won't change a thing. When my phone buzzed that morning, Mom flashing on the screen, I had no idea the past was about to walk right into the empire it once ignored. The night of the party, I almost turned the car around twice. The GPS led me to a luxury venue on the edge of the city. Glass walls, valet parking, soft jazz spilling out into the cool air. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful. The kind of place my parents used to book for Ethan's extravagant birthday parties, 10-layer cakes, photographers, champagne fountains. Except this time, my name was on the marquee. "Happy birthday, Lily Morgan," in gold letters that glimmered under the lights. I stepped out of the car in a sleek black dress, heels clicking softly against the pavement. The valet smiled. "Ms. Morgan, happy birthday. Your private suite is ready upstairs." My private suite. Of course, I designed the event myself. What they didn't know was that the entire venue was owned by my company. I'd bought it last year as part of an investment expansion. And tonight, I decided to let them celebrate here. Inside, the room buzzed with music and chatter. Balloons, lights, crystal glasses clinking. My family was front and center, radiant in their usual way, like a picture-perfect portrait of affection that had somehow forgotten one of its members for nearly a decade. "Lily," my mom gasped, arms wide. "You look stunning, honey." I smiled. "Thanks, Mom." Ethan swooped in next, tall and confident as ever, the golden boy in a navy suit. "Look who finally decided to come home," he teased, pulling me into a hug that smelled like expensive cologne and arrogance. "Happy birthday, sis. Big night for you. We pulled all this together last minute." "Yeah," I said softly, looking around the room. "It's impressive." My father joined, patting my shoulder. "You've been away so long. We thought this might remind you of what family feels like." What family feels like. The words stuck like thorns in my chest. Then the lights dimmed. The crowd turned. A slideshow began. Photos of Ethan's milestones, vacations, award ceremonies. Only a few scattered pictures of me, and even those were from when I was a child. People clapped. My mother dabbed her eyes. Ethan took a bow. I let it all play out. Then I took the microphone. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "This is sweet. Unexpected." The room went quiet. You know, for 9 years, I spent my birthdays working, waiting tables, building a dream you all assumed I didn't have. While you celebrated every success Ethan ever breathed, you forgot the girl who quietly learned to stand alone. I turned toward the banner on the wall, my name glowing in gold. "Funny thing, though, this place," I gestured around, "belongs to me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My father frowned. What do you mean? I own it. The venue, the event company, the catering, the lighting. Every contract that made tonight happen signed by me. Ethan's smile faltered. You're joking. I met his eyes. Do I look like I'm joking? The silence that followed was thick. My mother's hand trembled around her champagne glass. My father's jaw tightened. I walked toward the window overlooking the skyline, my reflection framed in gold and shadow. You forgot me for 9 years. But I didn't disappear. I built this, in the quiet you left behind. I turned back to them, my voice low, even almost kind. I invited you tonight not for revenge, but to say thank you. Because, without the loneliness you gave me, I'd never have found my strength. The bracelet on my wrist caught the light, flashing silver against the black silk of my sleeve. For 9 years, I watched you celebrate him. I said softly. Tonight, you're standing in my world, built from everything you forgot. And for the first time, they had nothing to say. No one moved for a long time. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the music still playing somewhere in the background, cheerful, out of place. My mother was the first to speak. Lily, we didn't know. We never. You never asked. I finished for her. She blinked, swallowing hard. We just thought you were still finding your way. I smiled faintly. I did. Just not the way you imagined. Ethan shifted beside her, his confidence unraveling by the second. So, what now? You brought us here to humiliate us. I looked at him, really looked at him, the brother who had grown up under a spotlight that had never once flickered my way.
No, Ethan.
I brought you here to see. There's a difference. My father exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. You've made your point. You've done well. Congratulations. Can we go back to being a family now? Family. That word again, as if it were something you could dust off and hand back after years of neglect. I took a deep breath and stepped closer, my heels silent against the marble floor. We can, but not as the people we were. Their eyes followed me as I spoke, calm, deliberate, each word cutting gently but deep. To Mom, I began softly. I need you to stop apologizing only when guilt catches up. Start showing up when no one's watching. Love me out loud, not just when there's a crowd to see it. She nodded weakly, tears already gathering. To Dad, I continued, you taught us that success meant being loud. The bigger the car, the better the man. But I built my life on quiet wins. Maybe now you'll see there's power in the things that don't need to be announced. His eyes dropped to the floor. For the first time, I saw something like shame flicker across his face. Then I turned to Ethan. You had everything, and you made it look easy. I had nothing, and I made it count. You don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself a purpose. He looked at me, guilt written across every muscle in his face. I didn't know it hurt that much. It wasn't your job to know, I said softly. But now you do. So do better, not for me, but for you. I walked to the center of the room, the bracelet on my wrist catching the light again. This isn't about revenge, I said. It's about balance. You don't get to erase what happened, but you can choose what happens next. The silence that followed was different now, not defensive, not awkward. Just still, like a family trying to hear itself for the first time. My mother stepped forward and, hesitantly, reached for my hand. Lily, can we start over? I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw her not as the woman who forgot me, but as someone who might finally be ready to remember. Maybe, I said quietly, but on new terms. The following weeks felt strangely quiet. No drama, no shouting, no excuses, just a slow, awkward rebuilding of something that might one day resemble a family. At first, I kept my distance. Calls from Mom went unanswered. Messages from Ethan sat unread. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired of being the only one trying. But then something shifted. A photo arrived in the mail one morning. No note, no envelope. Just a picture of a small cake with one candle and Happy 28th, Lily, written in neat handwriting. The plate beneath it was the same pattern as the ones from our old kitchen. I smiled, not because it fixed anything, but because it meant they were trying. Weeks turned into months. I watched from afar as Ethan started volunteering at a youth art program, mentoring kids who didn't have anyone cheering them on. Mom began sending me small updates. Made your favorite lemon pie today. Your father finally learned how to use Zoom. Little things. Honest things. It wasn't perfection. It was progress. One night, after wrapping up a meeting, I found myself alone in my office, city lights shimmering like a constellation below. I reached into my drawer and pulled out my grandmother's bracelet. The metal was worn now, the heart charm slightly scratched, but it still glowed when the light hit it just right. Her voice echoed in my mind, as clear as the day she'd said it. Don't wait for them to remember to start living, Lily. I traced the charm with my thumb, smiling softly. I didn't, Grandma. I lived. And they finally remembered. That night, my phone buzzed again. Mom's name lit up the screen. For the first time, I didn't hesitate to answer. Happy birthday, sweetheart, she said gently. We didn't forget this year. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of those words settle in a place that had been cold for too long. Thank you, Mom, I whispered. Neither did I. I ended the call, turned off the office lights, and looked out at the skyline one last time, the world I built from the silence they left me in. In that moment, I realized birthdays aren't about who remembers the day you were born. They're about remembering the woman you've become. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, its silver catching the moonlight, and smiled. For 9 years, they forgot the girl I was. I whispered to the night. But this time, they finally met the woman I became.